At this juncture, I will invite the government statistician, Dr. Alhassan Idrisu, to deliver the welcome remarks and the purpose for today's program. Hello, sir. Please give it up for him.
Distinguished Chairperson and special guest of honor, Honorable Dr. Kasiel Atuban Forson, Minister for Finance, ably represented by Honorable Nyakon Thomas Ampim, Deputy Finance Minister and MP for Esujeman, Honorable Minister for Local Government, Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, Honorable Majority Leader, ably represented by Honorable Shaib Ahmed Jerry, Deputy Minority Whip and MP for Weja Bawi. Oh, did I mix? I think so. I'm sorry. Honorable Majority Leader, I'll take it again. Ably represented by Honorable Isaac Adongo, Chairman of the Finance Committee and MP for Bolgatanga Central. I could have mixed this up. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry for that. Honorable Minority Leader, ably represented by Honorable Shaib Ahmed Jerry, who is the Deputy Minority Whip and MP for Weja Bawi. We have honorable members of Parliament here present. Chairman of the Governing Board of the Ghana Statistical Service, Dr. Yauban, the Deputy Government Statistician, Alhaji Omar Seidu, members of the Diplomatic Corps, representatives of development partners, representatives of ministries, departments, agencies. We have our regional statisticians here present, colleagues from the Ghana Statistical Service. Our management is here as well, members of the business community, civil society organizations. We have members of the academia and research also present here. And then friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen. That's a very tall and long acknowledgement. But I'm sure subsequent speakers would probably borrow this existing protocol and continue with their speech. Good morning and a very warm welcome to you all. On behalf of the Ghana Statistical Service, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you to the official launch of the district-level multidimensional poverty incidence and ranking fact sheet for Ghana covering the period 2021 to 2025. Your presence here today sends a strong message. It reflects our collective commitment to confronting poverty with evidence, honesty, agency, and action. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, today's release is historic. For the first time in Ghana's history, we are able to produce comparable multidimensional poverty estimates for all 261 districts consistently over multiple years. So this is not just another statistical release. It is a major milestone for Ghana's statistical system, decentralized planning, poverty targeting, and evidence-based policymaking. For many years, national and regional averages helped us understand broad poverty levels and trends. But as we know, averages can hide deep inequalities between districts and communities. A region may appear to be progressing overall, while some districts within that same region continue to face severe deprivation. Today, we move beyond averages. Today, we are bringing poverty statistics closer to the people, closer to communities, and closer to where decisions are made. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this work is also deeply connected to Ghana's long term national development agenda and our global commitment under the Sustainable Development Goals. At the heart of the Sustainable Development Goals is the commitment to end poverty in all its forms everywhere and to ensure that no one is left behind. The district level multidimensional poverty estimates provide Ghana with a practical tool for measuring progress towards SDG 1 on poverty reduction, SDG 3 on health, SDG 4 on education, SDG 6 on water and sanitation, SDG 8 on decent work, and SDG 10 on reducing inequalities. More importantly, the evidence supports Ghana's broader development priorities by helping government and stakeholders identify where deprivation is deepest, where inequalities persist, and where investment will have the greatest impact on people's lives. This is how statistics support national transformation, and this is how evidence strengthens development planning. This is how Ghana can actually ensure that growth translates into improved well being for every district, every community, and every citizen. Distinguished participants, poverty is not only about income. Multidimensional poverty means that people experience several forms of deprivation at the same time. In fact, a person may have little or no education, live in poor housing, lack access to clean water or sanitation, struggle to find decent work, or be unable to access healthcare and other essential services. Multidimensional poverty addresses all of these. In simple terms, multidimensional poverty measures whether people are able to live healthy, productive, safe, and dignified lives. This is why multidimensional poverty matters. A household may earn income and still face serious deprivation in education, in health, in housing, sanitation, electricity, nutrition, and employment opportunities. The multidimensional poverty approach helps us understand poverty more fully and more realistically. It shows not only how many people are poor, but also the different forms of hardship they experience and the intensity of those deprivations. This provides a much stronger basis for policy action, targeting, and resource allocation than income measures alone. The estimates we are releasing today were produced using internationally accepted small area estimation techniques, combining data from the 2021 population and housing census, the 2022 to 2024 annual household income and expenditure survey, and the 2025 quarterly labor force survey across 13 well-being indicators. The result is the most detailed and comprehensive district-level poverty evidence ever produced in Ghana. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share a few important findings before the main presentation would be done to give you the details. First, there is encouraging news. Out of Ghana's 261 districts, 250 recorded reductions in multidimensional poverty between 2021 and 2025. This tells us that progress is possible. It tells us that investment in education, healthcare, social protection, infrastructure, and livelihoods can make a difference. But the report also reminds us that progress is uneven. Unyo Naswam district in the Northeast region recorded the highest multidimensional poverty incidence in 2025, with 51.6% of its population experiencing multiple deprivations. At the other end, Ayawaso North Municipal in the Greater Accra region recorded the lowest poverty incidence at 5.5%. This means the gap between the highest and the lowest districts is more than 46 percentage points. This is a powerful reminder that where a person lives in Ghana still significantly shapes their opportunities and quality of life. Another important finding is that the 6 districts with the highest poverty incidence in 2025 are all located in the Northeast region. The evidence also shows that poverty remains concentrated mainly in the parts of the Northeast, the Northern, Oti, Savannah, Upper East, Upper West, Bono East regions. At the same time, some districts achieved remarkable progress. While West districts in the Upper West region reduced multidimensional poverty from 61.9% in 2021 to 24% in 2025, representing the largest improvement nationally. Setre Afram Plains in the Ashanti region also reduced poverty dramatically from 50.5% in 2021 to 13.5% in 2025. These districts show that meaningful progress can happen, even in places that once faced very high poverty levels. We must study what worked in these districts and apply the lessons everywhere. However, the report also identifies districts where poverty worsened. For example, Gwan district in the Oti region recorded the largest increase in multidimensional poverty, rising from 28.1% in 2021 to 34.8% in 2025. Some districts also recorded only marginal improvements. This tells us clearly that progress cannot be assumed. It must be monitored, sustained, and strengthened continuously. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the findings also speak directly to the important role of Parliament and parliamentarians in Ghana's fight against multidimensional poverty. Parliament approves national budgets, scrutinizes public spending, oversees government programs, and represents development needs of communities across the country. The district poverty rankings provide Parliament with powerful evidence to strengthen budget debates, improve oversight, guide constituency development priorities, and ensure that national resources reach districts with the greatest levels of deprivation. The evidence before us today should help move discussions beyond broad national averages toward more targeted interventions that respond to the realities facing individual districts and communities. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the value of this ranking is not in naming districts. And I want to take this again. The value of this ranking that the Statistical Service, Ghana Statistical Service, is publishing today is not in naming districts. The value lies in guiding action. These rankings should help government target interventions better. They should help metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies improve planning and budgeting. They should help Parliament strengthen oversight. They should help development partners align support with districts facing the greatest need. They should help businesses identify underserved communities where investments can create jobs and improve livelihoods. And they should help citizens demand accountability backed by evidence. Today, the Ghana Statistical Service is releasing not only the national district ranking, but also individual poverty fact sheets for every district in Ghana, 261 of them. Each fact sheet provides detailed evidence on poverty trends over time, that's between 2021 and 2025, the number of multidimensionally poor people, poverty intensity, the contribution of education, health, living conditions, and employment to poverty, the key drivers of deprivation, and practical recommendations for action. These poverty fact sheets will be made publicly available on the Ghana Statistical Service website immediately after the launch. We encourage policymakers, researchers, civil society organizations, students, development partners, and the media to use them extensively. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, statistics matter most when they improve lives. Data has value only when it informs decisions, shapes policy, and directs resources and changes outcomes for people. This is why today's launch is not the end of a process. It is the beginning of a national conversation and a national responsibility. Before I conclude, permit me to express sincere appreciation to all institutions and individuals who contributed to this important work and to the successful organization of this program. I wish to particularly acknowledge the government of Ghana and the Ministry of Finance for their strong and unwavering support to the Ghana Statistical Service for recognizing the critical role of statistics in national development. In fact, in almost all our programs last year and this year so far, we've had our Honorable Deputy Minister for Finance, Honorable Ampem, chair them, and we are deeply, deeply grateful. Thank you very much, Honorable. Not just that, but the deep sense of commitment shown by the Minister, his Deputy, and the entire Ministry of Finance is commendable. I'm especially grateful to the Honorable Minister for Finance, Dr. Kisel Atoban-Forson, whose personal commitment to strengthening and resourcing the Ghana Statistical Service continues to support the production of timely, credible, and policy-relevant statistics for Ghana. Honorable Minister for Finance, permit me to also warmly congratulate you for your leadership in guiding Ghana to successfully complete the 3-year IMF-supported Extended Credit Facility Program in such a remarkable and disciplined manner. This achievement is important for restoring macro stability, rebuilding confidence in the economy, and creating a stronger foundation for inclusive growth and poverty reduction. On a personal note, I'm particularly delighted to have contributed to the design and implementation of the program during my time at the Ministry of Finance before assuming office as government statistician. It is therefore deeply gratifying to witness the successful completion of the program and the progress Ghana continues to make toward economic recovery and resilience. I also acknowledge the support of ASEPA for their continued partnership and financial support towards this program, but more for the Ghana Statistical Service. We further appreciate the leadership of Parliament and honorable members of Parliament for their support and collaboration in the organization of this national event. I thank deeply the governing board of the Ghana Statistical Service for its leadership and strategic guidance. I acknowledge the invaluable support of our development partners, technical collaborators, ministries, departments, and agencies, metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies, research institutions, NDPC, and all households that provided data. I also wish to express profound appreciation to the hardworking management and staff of the Ghana Statistical Service, whose dedication, professionalism, technical competence, and long hours of work made both this program and the production of these fact sheets possible. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the message from this report is clear. One, poverty reduction must move from broad national discussions to precise district level action. Two, the districts falling behind must receive urgent attention. Three, districts making progress must be supported to sustain gains. And four, districts that have succeeded must be studied so that their lessons can guide national policy. Let us, therefore, use this evidence boldly. Let us target resources where deprivation is deepest. Let us strengthen district planning with data. Let us align budgets with evidence. Let us monitor results honestly. And above all, let us ensure that no district and no community is left behind in Ghana's development journey. It is now my honor to welcome once again our distinguished chairman, ably represented by Honorable Thomas Ampemnyako, and all of you to this memorable occasion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alhassan Idrisu, for such a perfect framing for today's program. Before we move on to the next speaker, I would like to acknowledge more of our key functionaries here with us. Honorable Jerry Ahmed Shaib, MP for Wejagbawi constituency. Hello, sir. You're welcome. Honorable Isaac Adongo, MP for Bolgatanga constituency. Hi, sir. You're welcome, sir. We also have with us Honorable Zenato Rollins, MP for Kole Klote constituency. You're welcome, madam. And finally with us, we have Mr. Ni Odote with the NDPC. Hi, sir. At this point, I would invite Member of Parliament for Wejagbawi constituency, Honorable Ahmed Shaib, to deliver brief remarks on behalf of the minority leader. Please help me welcome him.
Distinguished chairperson and special guest of honor, who is also the Deputy Minister of Finance and the Member of Parliament for the good people of Esojaman, Thomas Ampemnyako, my respected friend and brother-in-law, honorable majority leaders, able representative, Honorable Isaac Adongo, Member of Parliament for Borga Central, and Chairman of the Finance Committee. I've also seen the very latest second vice president of the Pan-African Parliament, Dr. Zenato Rollins, who is also the MP for Kole Klote, the chairman of the governing board of the Ghana Statistical Service, the government statistician, Dr. Al-Hassan Idrisu, the deputy government statistician, Alhaji Umaru Seidu, honorable members of parliament present, representatives of development partners, representatives of ministries, departments, and agencies, members of the diplomatic corps, CSOs represented by Dr. Rashid Draman of ASEPA, members of academia and research institutions, friends from the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. As you are very much aware, I'm privileged to represent the respected minority leader, the Osain Alexander Kwamina Afenyo Markin, for the launch of the district level multidimensional poverty incidence and ranking fact sheets for Ghana, covering the period 2021 to 2025. Let me begin by commending the Ghana Statistical Service for producing what I consider one of the most important governance and accountability tools for poverty reduction and national development in recent years. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, poverty is not an abstract concept. Poverty is experienced in homes, in our communities, in our schools, in our health centers, in our marketplaces, and in our workplaces. Poverty is felt. Poverty is felt when a child cannot stay in school. Poverty is felt when a household lacks clean water or electricity. Poverty is felt when families live in overcrowded conditions. Poverty is felt when young people cannot find decent work and when communities remain disconnected from opportunities that others take for granted. This is why the multidimensional poverty matters. It helps us to understand poverty beyond income alone. It shows the different forms of deprivation people face in their daily lives and gives us a clearer picture of inequality across districts and communities. Distinguished participants, one of the most significant achievements of this work is that for the first time in Ghana's history, multidimensional poverty estimates have been produced, and they have been produced for consistently all 261 districts over multiple years. This is a major step forward for transparency. It's also a major step forward for accountability and evidence-based governance. Because the truth is this: national averages can sometimes hide deep local inequalities. A country may appear to be progressing overall, while some districts continue to struggle with severe deprivation. Today's findings help bring those hidden realities into the open. It also helps that there is important for both government. Today's findings help bring those hidden realities into the open. And that is important for both government and parliament. As the government statisticians submitted, the findings contain both encouraging progress and serious policy warnings. And he's shared with you all the data on that already. These findings and many more to be presented to us later today should concern all of us, because development must not depend on where a person is born or where they live. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, what I find particularly important about this report is that it allows us to ask better questions. It allows us to ask, why are some districts improving rapidly while others are stagnating or worsening? It also gives us reasons to ask what interventions we are bringing on board, which investments are delivering results, and where are the gaps that require urgent attention. As we know, policy outcomes are not automatic. They depend on targeted action, effective implementation, and accountability. The role of the minority in parliament is to scrutinize policies, question expenditure, demand accountability, and ensure fairness in the use of public resources. These district rankings provide parliament with stronger evidence to ask whether development spending is truly reaching the communities and districts that need it most. They also provide a basis for more informed debates on education, healthcare, infrastructure, jobs, sanitation, social protection, and local development. Distinguished participants, the district rankings must be used responsibly. They should not become instruments for political point scoring or stigmatization. A district with high poverty levels should not be blamed. Rather, it should be prioritized. It should receive support, and it should receive sustained national attention. That is the true value of evidence-based policy making. As a member of parliament, and here I mean the minority leader for Efutu constituency, I see practical value in these findings for constituency development and local planning. The data helps us identify vulnerable communities, understand the drivers of deprivation, improve targeting of interventions, and strengthen advocacy for investments that improve education, livelihoods, healthcare, sanitation, and opportunities for young people. This applies not only to Efutu or Esojaman or Bolgatanga Central or Wejagbawe, but to every constituency and district across Ghana. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this work also reminds us of the importance of protecting the independence, professionalism, and credibility of official statistics, and that I highly commend the government statistician. Without credible data, public policy becomes guesswork. Without credible data or without credible evidence, accountability becomes weak. And without trusted statistics, it becomes difficult to measure progress honestly. This is why the Ghana Statistical Service must continue to receive strong institutional support from all of us. At this point, let me sincerely acknowledge and appreciate the Ghana Statistical Service, led by the government statistician, Dr. Alhassan Idrisu, for this important national contribution. A round of applause for him. I also commend Parliament, development partners, civil society organizations, academia, the media, ministries, departments, and agencies, metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies, and all stakeholders gathered here today for supporting the use of evidence in governance and development. I further recognize the hardworking staff of the Ghana Statistical Service, whose dedication and professionalism made this important exercise possible. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the message from this report is clear, and we have been told already that it is clear for us to move from broad discussions about poverty to targeted district level action. It is also clear that we must ensure that public resources are allocated fairly and transparently. It is also clear that we must strengthen monitoring and accountability, and we must also focus on our national attention on districts where deprivation remains severe or where progress has stalled. I therefore urge Parliament, government institutions, development partners, civil society organizations, researchers, and the private sector to actively use these findings to shape policies, budgets, oversight, advocacy, and investment decisions, because ultimately, statistics matter only when they improve lives. And development matters only when it reaches every district, every community, and every Ghanaian. Thank you very much, and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Please give it up for him again. And I smile very widely when I hear commendation for my boss, the GS, because it's very evident that he's doing so much for Ghana. And since he joined, it's been back to back to back being here. And so, yes, I mean, it's very well accorded to him. Thank you very much, GS. At this juncture, I would apologize to Honorable Zaneto. Initially, I mentioned her name wrongly. So, Honorable Zaneto, I'm back again to correct myself. Thank you very much. We also have with us Honorable Iraba Obin, MP for Ablikuma North. Hello, Honorable. Irabna Obin. Thank you. We also have Honorable Joseph Kwame Kuma, MP for Kintampo North, with us here. Hello, Honorable. At this juncture, I will.
Of this country, and also to congratulate the honorable minister represented by Honorable Ampim for a great job that you've done. We all know that it's not been easy to manage the IMF program. We're all a bit worried that there may be some issues at some point, and you happen to do it very perfectly, and I think you deserve a round of applause. I just want to tell you that for the last the last IMF program, when the government statistician was already in office at the ministry, we struggled to complete that program. As a matter of fact, we applied to the IMF to give us a waiver for non-observance of performance criteria. What it means is that we agreed we couldn't complete the program, but we begged the IMF to let us go and live our lives. But fortunately this time, we passed all the tests, and IMF said, "You're a good student, you can go." So thank you very much for making us very proud. I would like to onset acknowledge the fact that whatever I'm saying, you must be hearing it in the voice of Honorable Muhammad Yarga, not Honorable Azika Dungo. It is a pleasure for me today to join you to launch this important milestone of the Ghana Statistical Service. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the people of Bogo and the Honorable Mama Yalga would have wished to be here in person to deliver these remarks. Unfortunately, he has had to be out of the jurisdiction performing other equally important assignments for the nation. He has therefore asked me to stand in his stead and deliver these few remarks. I would like to commend the Ghana Statistical Service for producing what I consider to be one of the most important tools for governance and for development planning in our country. We do know that poverty can be endemic, and yet we still do not have the tools for assessing the complexities of poverty in our country. And this is an important step towards making sure that we are able to assess poverty in all its facets. For the first time in Ghana's history, we now have comparable multi-dimensional poverty estimates for all 261 districts of our country. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, poverty is not only about money, poverty is also about where a child goes to school. It's about whether families can access health care, whether communities have clean drinking water, sanitation, electricity, jobs, and opportunities. In simple terms, multidimensional poverty measures whether people are able to live safe lives, healthy, productive, and dignified lives. And the truth is, when these basic conditions are absent, inequality deepens and opportunities shrink. Ultimately, development becomes uneven. Distinguished participants, these findings are highly relevant to the work of Parliament, where we are coming from. Parliament approves national budgets. We oversee the public expenditure. Parliament ourselves will scrutinize policies and programs, and Parliament represent the communities across the country. Therefore, any work that seeks to measure the impact of these deliverables are very important to the work of Parliament. The district poverty rankings, therefore, provide members of Parliament with practical evidence to advocate for more effectively for their constituents and to support fairer and more targeted developmental actions. These findings provide us with the evidence needed to better understand local interventions, identify vulnerabilities in our communities, and improve constituency level interventions, and strengthen collaboration between Parliament, local authorities, traditional leaders, and civil society. Very soon, and I know the Minister for Finance, per the dictates of the Public Financial Management Act, is already working very hard to produce the fiscal strategy document. which will define the contours of our policies going forward. And I do believe that this document has come very timely in order to shape the actions and policies that government intend to take at the level of cabinet. So, Minister, the ball is now in your court to make sure that you facilitate the work that is done to achieve the results he wants. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this report should not be reduced to rankings alone. The purpose is not to label districts, but the purpose is to guide action. The purpose is to ensure that districts with high poverty levels receive support to improve. Strong progress should be studied in order that we can learn lessons to move forward with others that are lagging behind. And districts where poverty is worsening should receive urgent policy action and diagnostic attention. This is how evidence should work in a democracy. It should guide actions, it should improve accountability, and it should help ensure fairness in development. Ladies, I therefore urge all members of parliament, ministries, departments, and agencies, and development partners and civil society organizations and the private sector to actively use these findings in planning, budgeting, oversight, advocacy, and program implementation. Because ultimately, the true measure of development is not the number of reports we produce, it is whether these lives of people are improved by those reports. Once again, I would like to appeal to the minister in the next budget cycle to listen to our ministries, departments, and agencies when they come with evidence-based findings from these reports, so that our budget for 2027 become truly reflective in addressing some of the concerns that have been identified. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Isaac Adongo, MP for Bolgasanga Central. Thank you very much, sir. At this point, may I invite Dr. Rashid Draman of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs to deliver a solidarity message on behalf of civil society organizations. Please help me welcome him.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, let me borrow the protocols established by the government statistician. And let me start by expressing a wish. And my wish is that all members of parliament were here this morning to listen to this important presentation. I say this because a few years ago, when we started our relationship with the Ghana Statistical Service, we had a meeting with the Right Honorable Speaker, and he said this: when I was Minister for Housing, which was 2010 to 2012, the data that I used, these are the words of the Right Honorable Speaker, the data that I used to guide housing policy in this country is the same data that is being quoted by members of parliament when they get up on the floor to debate issues related to housing, which presupposes that most of the time our decision makers get it wrong. It means in most cases, members of parliament do not have the accurate data and information to make decisions that affect our lives. They decide whether we get healthcare, they decide whether we get schools, and if the information on which the decision is based is not right, then the outcome is likely to be wrong. So I wish and hope that government statistician and the Ghana Statistical Service in future, when this is done, we get all members of parliament in this room. I think that that would improve the outcome of what we are doing today, because they have to hear this information, and that should guide every decision that they make on the floor of the House that affects all of us. Let me now go to my remarks. I am pleased to deliver this solidarity message on behalf of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs and on behalf of civil society organizations at the release of the regional and district multidimensional poverty index fact sheets and the district poverty ranking fact sheet. Let me first commend the Ghana Statistical Service for this important work. The release of these products is a major contribution to evidence-based planning, public accountability, and inclusive development in our country. For ASEPA, this initiative is important for one clear reason. Credible data strengthens democratic governance. I think it's been said already. It gives Parliament, civil society, the media, and citizens the evidence needed to ask the right questions, assess public policy, and demand better outcomes. Multidimensional poverty reminds us that poverty is not only about income, it's also about access to education, health, decent health conditions, water, sanitation, electricity, and other basic services. These are the issues that shape the daily lives of citizens and determine whether development is truly reaching households and communities. The district level fact sheets are particularly important. They bring the evidence of poverty closer to where decisions are made and where services are delivered. They also help reveal disparities that national and regional averages may hide. This is critical for Parliament, metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies, coordinating councils, and institutions involved in planning, budgeting, oversight, and service delivery. The district poverty ranking fact sheet is also a useful tool. It helps identify districts that require urgent attention. I think this has already been said. It provides a basis for targeted interventions, fairer resource allocation, and stronger monitoring of progress. Used well, it can support more informed dialogue between citizens, elected representatives, policymakers, and development actors. Let me digress a little bit here. One day I was in the Parliament of Zambia, and the Speaker of Parliament said they went to a community, and the chief asked them, when you sit in Parliament and debate and talk, where do you get the information from? Because definitely my people are absent in that discussion. And I think work like this by the Ghana Statistical Service helps to bring the realities of the people that members of parliament represent so that decisions can be made that really reflect the needs of the people. As a partner of the Ghana Statistical Service, ASEPA sees this release as more than a statistical event. It's an accountability event and an opportunity to strengthen the link between data, policy, budgeting, oversight, and ultimately the welfare of all of us, the citizens of this country. We therefore encourage Parliament, especially relevant committees, to use these products in their oversight and legislative work. We encourage civil society to use the evidence to support advocacy and public education. We encourage the media to communicate the findings in ways that citizens can understand. And I think this is an appeal to the media. I hope when we leave here, most of what is going to be presented here will not be sensationalized, because we need our citizens to understand the discussions that will take place here. We also encourage MMDAs to integrate the findings into their medium term development plans and local budget processes. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, producing data is important, but using data is what creates change. The government statistician has emphasized this already. The challenge before us is to use to ensure that these fact sheets do not remain on publications as publications on shelves. They must become working tools for planning, public dialogue, resource allocation, and accountability. On behalf of ASEPA, I congratulate the Ghana Statistical Service, its governing board, the government statistician, the technical team, and the partners for this important milestone. ASEPA remains committed to working with the GSS and other stakeholders to promote the use of credible statistics for parliamentary oversight, democratic accountability, and inclusive development. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Draman. Thank you for that reminder about accountability and citizen engagement, which adds a very important dimension to this conversation. Please help me give him a round of applause. At this point, I would acknowledge a few more dignitaries we have with us today. We have Dr. Philomena Nyako, a board member of the GSS board and also former government statistician. Please give her a round of applause. We also have Madam Anitha Narahari, Deputy Director for United Nations World Food Programme. Hello, Madam. You're welcome. We also have with us Dr. William Barnes, Strategic Advisor for UK Office of National Statistics. Thank you very much. At this point, I would invite the board chair of the Ghana Statistical Service, Dr. Anthony Alba, to deliver his remarks.
Good morning. We are far behind time, so I'll do what the previous speakers did by associating myself with the protocols. But let me acknowledge the support we get from our chairman this morning. He has been part of all our programs, and we are very happy to have you once again. I'm also happy to have my colleague, board member with me, Dr. Philomena Nyako, who was also a former government statistician. On behalf of the governing board of the Ghana Statistical Service, it is my honor to deliver these remarks at the launch of the district-level multidimensional poverty incidence and ranking fact sheets for Ghana covering the period 2021 to 2025. Today's event is important because it demonstrates the power of official statistics to shape national development, strengthen accountability, and improve lives. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, statistics are not merely numbers on paper. Statistics tell the story of people. And when I was looking at there was this photo before this one. It reminded me of the time I was growing up in my village. You know. And when you drive around Ghana, you see the same thing. They review where opportunities exist, where inequalities persist, and where urgent action is needed. And when statistics are credible, timely, and relevant, they become one of the most powerful tools for national transformation. And this, the previous speakers have elaborated this well. This is why the work being launched today matters deeply. The findings remind us that poverty remains unevenly distributed across Ghana. And we will hear from the Deputy Government Statistician when he presents the results. And we will find that the wide gap between Unyo and Naswan district, which recorded the highest multidimensional poverty incidence in 2025 at 51.6%, and Ayawaso North Municipal, which recorded the lowest at 5.5%, shows the importance of targeted policy responses and equitable resource allocation. When I received the electronic copy of these results, I called a government statistician and then I said, Doctor, the next thing we do is to make sure we disaggregate the data according to gender, because poverty affects men differently from women. And he said, oh, yeah, you are right, we'll do it. So it means there is some work to do. Because of time, let me just go straight to the point and say the governing board of the Ghana Statistical Service exists to provide strategic direction and oversight to ensure that Ghana continues to produce credible, professional, trusted, and policy relevant official statistics. The work being launched today, which we are very proud of, reflects that commitment. It also reflects the growing demand in Ghana for more disaggregated, of course, including gender disaggregated data, district level evidence to support planning, budgeting, targeting, monitoring, and accountability. Development is at the local level. At this point, let me sincerely commend the government statistician, Dr. Hassan, and his team for this work. The professionalism, dedication he and his team exhibit are fantastic. I mean, it makes us so proud as board. I also acknowledge the support of the parliament to have, as Seb said, all parliamentarians should be here. But I can tell you, for me, the presence of, I don't know how many parliamentarians are here this morning, gladdens my heart a lot. I haven't seen many parliamentarians in a program like this for a very, very long time. These are extremely busy people. And to have 4, 5, 6 of them here in this means to me that this is a very important work that the Statistical Service has done. Your continuous support is critical to strengthening Ghana's national statistical system and promoting evidence-based development. I will end here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Board Chair, for that brief remark. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor to invite the chairperson and special guest of honor for today's program, the Deputy Minister for Finance, representing the Honorable Minister for Finance. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Don't mind if I'm more high there. Adom TV. Naturally, I say a country kakra. Kaya ya Diego. Heaven is Yabishia. And I'm proud to once again represent the Finance Minister at Ghana Statistical Service event. A lot have been said. And then Sisi Ebefro say a chairman, that's my keynote address. See, it means I should have a lot to say. But earlier speakers have said a lot of things and they have touched the issues very, very significantly. When I came, I asked for that of a Suojaman. And I know Bolga Central, Kintampore, Kintampo North, uh, oh, Osulagata, uh, and my Akonta, everybody, and Rabna, everybody will be interested in their specific constituency. Because let me tell you something, I'm surprised at the figures from Eswojaman, the data from Eswojaman. On the whole, the statistics shows that we are doing well. Between 2024 and 2025, we have removed about 10,000 citizens out of multi-dimensional poverty, which is commendable. But the details, they say the devil is in the details. Look, top of our issue is toilet. Look, the statistics is telling me that 81.9% of my constituents do not have decent toilet. Is that not surprising? So if you don't know this, you continue to be building schools. I'm not saying building schools are not important. You continue to do some other things and still miss the point because the important things that will help them out of multidimensional poverty will be skipped. And I was looking at your definition that an improved toilet is deprived, a person is deprived if the household has no toilet, and specifically WC toilet, or if they use bucket or pan, or if they use public toilet or shared toilet outside the households. So you may be constructing public toilets thinking you are solving the problem, but that is also not the solution. And so three stations no kwana mode ban nenti. And yana yansisa kasana. So you get a point. So our assemblies, and I was happy you mentioned parliament. So all of us members of parliament will also have this in mind when we are approving the formula for the DACF. Because you see, it will make sense for us to continue to give directives that use 20% to construct classroom blocks, use 30% to do this. And we do that uniformly for every assembly. Assemblies have their peculiar challenges. And so we'll have to, in doing this, give enough room for them to be able to maneuver and solve their own local problems, but with supervision from the Ministry of Local Government and the Local Government Service. Dr. Hassan, you can trust that Dr. Forson will be very happy with this work. And so even though I haven't consulted him, I'm going to make a pledge that we are going to support you with funds to go to all the 16 regions, meet all the assemblies, and discuss these findings with them. Because, in fact, just this morning, my boss was telling me that we should focus on fiscal decentralization. And so he wants us to have a program to deepen fiscal decentralization. We are sending a lot of funds to the assemblies. How do we make sure that they are applying the funds correctly for areas that will make the best impact? I have also seen in your report that it is striking that all the bottom 6 districts are from one region. So as policymakers, we must be deliberate about sending resources and interventions to bring them up. The story shouldn't be the same next year when we publish the next edition of this. We must see that those who are at the bottom are coming up. We must be deliberate about this. Okay, let me now move on to my speech. And also stand on the existing protocols. It is a great pleasure to join you at this important national event. I recall reading the fourth quarter 2022 Multidimensional Poverty Report with deep concern. It revealed stark and persistent inequalities, particularly between urban and rural communities. In that report, 11 regions had multidimensional poverty above the national average of 49.3%, with Savannah region recording the highest, which is 78.6%. This year, we are hearing that it has moved from the Savannah region to Upper East, Northeast region. This was troubling because behind every poverty number was a child whose potential was constrained by circumstance. Behind every deprived rural district was a hardworking Ghanaian family striving for dignity, opportunity, and hope. And that is why this moment matters. For the first time in Ghana's history, we now have comparable multidimensional poverty estimates for all 261 districts consistently over several years. This is a major achievement for Ghana, and I want us to put our hands together for the Ghana Statistical Service. Clearly, this exercise has not been done just to satisfy a project requirement or fulfill a work plan activity. This is far bigger than that. These estimates are an economic governance tool. It is a development compass and powerful national accountability framework. They provide government and policymakers with the evidence needed to target interventions more precisely, allocate resources more fairly, and ensure that no district is left behind. Distinguished guests, the significance of today's exercise is even greater because it comes at a time of remarkable macroeconomic recovery and renewed national optimism. Only a short while ago, Ghanaians faced one of the most severe crises in our economic history. As the IMF mission chief reminded us last week, it was extremely traumatic for Ghanaians to go through the crisis in 2022. But through front-loaded bold reforms, fiscal discipline, coordinated monetary policy actions, and the resilience of the Ghanaian people, the economy has recovered strongly. Macroeconomic stability has taken hold and is set to strengthen further. Indeed, the positive developments in the economy must be welcomed. However, we recognize that the true and real test of recovery is whether ordinary people feel the improvements in their daily lives, whether jobs are expanding, whether people have access to decent housing and sanitation, whether children have access to quality education, whether women-led businesses can access capital, whether deprived communities receive roads, clean water, healthcare, electricity, and digital connectivity. That is why President Mahama has now directed that we move deliberately from economic stabilization to inclusive growth and socioeconomic transformation. This is another key reason why the release of today's multidimensional poverty report is so important. Because we have always known that poverty is not just about income. Poverty is multidimensional. Among others, it is about lack of quality education, which we are fixing through increased funding and intentional reforms. It is about limited healthcare access, which we are fixing by uncapping funding to the National Health Insurance and implementing the Mahama Cares and Primary Healthcare Program. It is about food insecurity, which we are also fixing through the Agriculture for Economic Transformation agenda. It is about weak infrastructure, which is why we are implementing the Big Push program. It is about energy deprivation, which we are fixing permanently with the construction of 1,200 megawatts thermal power plant. It is about digital inclusion, which we are fixing with 1 million coders. And it is about unequal access to opportunity, which we are fixing with targeted support to vulnerable households, women, youth, persons with disabilities, and deprived communities. In other words, we understand that poverty is ultimately about denied opportunity, and that is precisely what this government is determined to change. Ladies and gentlemen, against this backdrop and in response to rising expectations of the Ghanaian people, government has recalibrated its economic direction, policy direction. Macroeconomic stability remains the foundation, but the next phase of the reset agenda is clear: growth and jobs alongside social protection and human development. On growth and jobs, we are pursuing policies to stimulate private sector expansion, industrialization, agribusiness transformation, infrastructure development, and value addition across strategic sectors. But growth alone is not enough. Inclusive growth is what we seek. That is why social protection remains a central pillar of this government's economic transformation agenda. This government will sustain investments in programs such as the No Fee Stress Intervention, Free Sanitation Pad Initiative, LEAP support for vulnerable households, the school feeding program, capitation grant, the National Health Insurance support, and increased support for persons with disabilities. Distinguished guests, I am confident that the district level poverty estimates being launched today would shape policy in practical ways. Certainly, the findings in today's report hold both encouraging signals and important warnings. It tells us that progress is possible and shows that investments in infrastructure, education, healthcare, social protection, and local economic development will make a difference in many communities. As a member of parliament representing the good people of Esojama, I see enormous value in this work. Ghanaians can be assured that the findings in this report would, amongst others, influence budget allocations, infrastructure prioritizations, social intervention targeting, agricultural support systems, and local economic development planning. For metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies, these reports provide a powerful evidence base for medium-term development plans. And commitment demonstrated in producing these multidimensional poverty estimates strengthens our nation's reputation as one of Africa's leading statistical systems. I am confident that the planned panel discussions today will unpack key issues that will affirm the significance of these reports. Ladies and gentlemen, President Mahama is focused on building a Ghana where growth is broad based, prosperity is shared, and opportunity is decentralized. He is focused on building a Ghana where economic recovery translates into improved living standards, a Ghana where fiscal discipline coexists with compassion, a Ghana where evidence guides economic governance, and a Ghana where national progress is measured not only by GDP growth, but by improvements in human dignity and quality of life. This is the reset agenda before us. Let us therefore use these findings not simply to describe poverty, but to fight it. Let us use these findings not simply to measure inequality, but to reduce it. Let us use these findings not simply to identify vulnerability, but to expand opportunities. Because ultimately, the true purpose of public policy is the people. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that a nation transforms by confronting inequality and deprivation with courage, evidence, discipline, and compassion. Today, Ghana is better positioned to continue to do precisely that. We have restored stability. We have rebuilt confidence. We are investing in growth. and we are renewing our commitment to inclusive development and social advancement. Our charge is to build a Ghana where recovery becomes prosperity and prosperity becomes opportunity for every citizen in every district. Let us do so with credible data as our compass. We must not and cannot fail. Thank you, and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Honorable. The Honorable Minister has reminded us that growth alone is not enough. Inclusive growth is what we need in our districts and our communities. And it is our hope that evidence provided today will help us achieve that. Thank you very much, Honorable. Please give it up for him again. I must also say that I saw that the Honorable Minister was both shocked and impressed by the Sojaman findings he saw in the report. So I believe it's a fitting period to actually receive the detailed presentation of the multidimensional poverty estimates. And I would like to invite the acting deputy government statistician, Mr. Omar Seidu, to give us the presentation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, permit me to stand on the protocols already observed and proceed with the presentation. Even as pilots would tell us when we board a plane, sit back, relax, and enjoy. But in this case, we are not to enjoy, but we are to reflect on the findings of this survey. Yes, I was on this one. Why these findings are important for us today? They help us track progress in reducing non-monetary poverty between the period 2021 and 2025. They provide us district-level evidence on multidimensional poverty across the entire country. They support targeted policy interventions and help us allocate resources equitably. And it strengthens evidence-based planning at a subnational level. This is what we would work together on, and it provides us the basis to understand the reports that is being published today. Multidimensional poverty. We know that poverty has long been identified as impacting different people differently. In fact, it is the reason why the SDG Goal 1 is carved around this, that we should ensure we eradicate poverty in all its forms everywhere because of the understanding that poverty is multifaceted. Multidimensional poverty remains the only SDG indicator out of the 231 indicators that is not expected to be internationally comparable because different countries experience poverty differently. So out of the 231 indicators, that is the only indicator that countries are allowed to monitor it differently. And so the African Union Agenda 2061 also recognizes multidimensional poverty, and so has ensured that inclusive growth and sustainable development is what will help us address it. When we come home, throughout our development frameworks, poverty has been one of the key things that has remained in all of them. In our current development framework, in the coordinated program, we have poverty as one of the key issues. In the medium-term development framework, we have poverty as one of the key issues. We therefore need to regularly monitor poverty to ensure we know the progress we are making on this journey. The key concepts that underlie this particular piece of work. Why do we measure multidimensional poverty? We cannot measure poverty without a comprehensive understanding of what it is and how it manifests itself. This reflects the multi-deprivations our people experience in everyday life, which are essential to guarantee a dignified life, including lack of access to clean water, access to electricity, poor health and nutrition, wage employment, inadequate housing, among others. In fact, the indicator in the SDGs framework that measures multidimensional poverty states that we want to reduce by 2030 the proportion of men, women, and children of all ages living in poverty in all its dimensions according to national definition. So how Ghana defines multidimensional poverty will be different from how the UK defines multidimensional poverty. Although multidimensional poverty is meant to be monitored by countries independently, the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, based at the University of Oxford, decided to develop the methodology to guide countries in measuring multidimensional poverty. In this framework, 3 dimensions were identified. And these 3 dimensions are health, education, and living conditions. These 3 dimensions together have 10 indicators. And these 10 indicators constitutes what is used to measure multidimensional poverty. In the year 2020, as part of our effort in Ghana to see progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, we requested OFI to support us look at a framework for Ghana. So we set up a national team made up of MBAs, academia, and the development partners with support from OFI. And we developed the framework for Ghana. And that framework remained 3 dimensions, but we increased the indicators to 12 from the 10 that OFI had originally developed. So our first multidimensional poverty report in 2020 had 12 indicators. Subsequently, we included employment for the case of Ghana as a 4th dimension because we realized that employment has a key role in defining multidimensional poverty in our country. So employment was added. So out of these 4 dimensions, we have 13 indicators that monitor multidimensional poverty. And what is instructive about these 13 indicators is that together, these 13 indicators impact 11 out of the 17 SDGs goals, which means that our choice of these indicators is very important in identifying multidimensional poverty in Ghana. These dimensions are grounded in national policies to ensure that they are relevant. And as Honorable Minister said, this is what would drive the change we want to see. And we are happy that we have the opportunity to have all of you in this room today. Living conditions, we see that the National Energy Transition Framework, which seeks to ensure that we have a modern energy and reduce our reliance on solid fuels, is captured in the dimension 1. This is also reflected in the national housing policy, which is seeking to address overcrowding, housing quality, among others. Education. The education sector strategy for 2018 to 2030 is clearly identified in this. The health sector, universal health coverage, is also identified in this dimension. Then when we come to employment, creating jobs, ensuring accountability, and promoting shared growth, which is contained in our coordinated program of economic and social development policy, is one of the key policy tools. We need to understand the indicators that underlie the multidimensional poverty and the deprivation cutoff. And this is very important because we need to understand the indicators and how households or individuals are classified to be deprived in each of these indicators. So if you pick cooking fuel, a household is said to be deprived if it uses solid fuel. That's the first thing. Solid fuel, charcoal, firewood, among others. And the cooking is not done outside the house or in the open, or the cooking is done in an enclosed space without much ventilation, then in that case, that household is described as deprived in cooking fuel. And so every member of that household will be assigned the same deprivation in number. Water. A household is deprived in water if the household uses what do you call it? Unclean sources of drinking water, mostly through water coming from springs, coming from dams, from dugouts, or if the household spend more than 30 minutes or more in a round trip walking to fetch water, it means that that household is deprived in access to water. Assets. Assets are measured looking at an indicator of ownership, where small assets like a TV, telephone, bike, motorbike, refrigerator, or a computer, if a household doesn't have two of any of these, or a big asset like a car, then that household is said to be deprived. So the expectation Omar's household should have, at least if I have a mobile phone and I have a bicycle, then I am not deprived. But if I don't have at least these, then that household is deprived. Then housing. A household is said to be deprived if the household uses inadequate flooring material, that is the bare floor, the earth, or the walls of the house are made of either mud, palm leaves, thatch, or raffia. Then that household is deprived in housing. Overcrowding is when, on the average, more than 3 people use one to give you 9 years of schooling. And that way, that household is not deprived. But if none of the household members has completed 9 years of schooling, which is basic school, then that household is deprived. School attainment. School lab. If there is a people at basic level who is 2 years behind the year that child is supposed to be in school, then school lag, the household is deprived in school lag. Then we have come to health. Health has 2 indicators. The first indicator is nutrition, and the second is health insurance. And let me mention here, before 2022, the first multidimensional poverty report we published in 2021, in 2020, used mortality instead of nutrition. Because at the time we rely on the census, which had indicators on mortality. But the subsequent surveys we have relied on do not measure mortality. And the other indicator that the OFI framework allows is nutrition. And we have nutrition in all the other surveys. So nutrition replaced, and we'll see that when I show the details. So nutrition, if there is a child in the household who is under 5 years, and that child is malnourished, then the child is deprived in nutrition. Malnourished means that either underweight, stunted, or wasted. Underweight is a child with a weight lower than the healthy range for their age. Stunted is a child who is shorter than expected for their age, often due to a long-term poor nutrition or illness. Then wasted is a child who is thin for their height, often due to severe weight loss. Then health insurance. Health insurance is if there is anyone in the household who is not covered under either public or private health insurance scheme, then the entire household is told that they are deprived. So, for instance, a household of 10 people, but one of them is not covered. And how do we get covered? If you are not registered, or you have registered, but your registration has expired and you have not renewed it, then you are not covered. And so, by virtue of one person in the household not being covered, what it means is that the household is not covered. Because the understanding and the research has shown that a household suffers in bearing the medical bills if a single member of that household is not covered. Then employment has one indicator, and that is if members who are 15 years and older in that household, if we don't even have one of them who is employed, either an employee or he's a self-employed, then the household is deprived. So a household of, say, 5 people, 3 of them are 15 years and older, and none of the 3 is either an employee earning wage or is self-employed earning some wage, then that household is deprived in employment. So these are the indicators, the 13 indicators we are using in Ghana. Now, these indicators and thankfully, all the 4 dimensions are equally weighted. They all have a weight of 1.25. 0.25, sorry, which is a quarter. But within each dimension, depending on the number of indicators, we weight the indicators also. So you see that the living conditions indicators have smaller weight relative to, for instance, you take education. Because education has only 3 indicators. Living standards has 7 indicators. Employment has only 1 indicator, which means that the weight of employment is higher than all of them. And that is very important because the weight is one of the things that determines multidimensional poverty. Now, who is multidimensional poor? A person is considered multidimensionally poor if he or she is deprived in at least 1/3 or more of the weighted indicators. We have just spoken about the indicators. They are 13 in number, which means that if the person or the household is deprived in 4 or more indicators, then that household is multidimensionally poor. Which means that if the household is deprived in less than that, they are not multidimensionally poor. 2 key measures of multidimensional poverty are incidence and intensity. The incidence is the head count. And here we are measuring the proportion of the persons who are simultaneously deprived in multiple indicators. Or simply, a person is classified as multidimensionally poor if they suffer deprivations in 4 or more of the 13 indicators for the case of Ghana. Then that is where we talk of the incidence of poverty. The intensity of poverty is how poor the poor person. While several people may be classified as multidimensionally poor, the poverty of some may be severe than that of others. And so we have what we call, intensity, which measures the average percentage of indicators in which the poor are deprived in. The percentage of the 13 indicates that a household is deprived in determines the intensity. So we can have high intensity, which is when more of the indicators, the household is deprived in more of the indicators, and low intensity when they are deprived in less. But of course, the minimum is 4. Now, the methodology underlying this work, we use 3 data sets in arriving at these estimates. We use the census, the 2021 population and housing census data, the annual household and income and expenditure survey, which was conducted between 2022 and 2024, and the quarterly labor force survey, which is conducted in 2025. So these 3 data sets is what we use in computing this. And we use small area estimation methods and the incidence and intensity based on the recommended methods that have been provided through the OFI framework. Now, let's look at what we have in the multidimensional poverty. We can see that within each of the 16 regions, between 2021 and 2025, here we are just comparing only the beginning of the series and the end of the series. 2021 and 2025, generally there is a decline in multidimensional poverty across all districts, which means that many districts are moving, in the right direction. But we see 3 districts stand out. Here, we see Northeast, though it's made some progress, but Northeast, the districts within Northeast, the minimum out of the 6 districts is 38.3 in 2021. When it comes to 2025, it's rather the minimum has gotten worse, right? It's 40.9. Then the maximum has rather improved from 56.9 to 51.6. Similar, we observe the same thing with OT and Northern region. But it's very interesting to look at Ashanti region down here. You can see that in 2021, there was a district in Ashanti region that had an MPR of 50.5, which means that half of the population of that district was multidimensionally poor. Then in 2025, the West District in Ashanti region is 13.6, which means that between 13 and 14 people out of every 100 in Ashanti region in that particular district. So this is a good sign that there's been a lot of progress in the country. Here we are trying to show overall West 10 performing districts on the average. So if you pick 10 districts, the West performing districts, the 10 West performing districts, between the period 2021 and 2025, on the average, we see that Yonyo Nansua has been there throughout the 5 years. It has been among the West throughout the 5 years. Chirpone has been there 4 out of the 5 years. In fact, the first year measurement, the base year, which is 2021, it was not among the West. That's what it means. In 2021, Chirpone was not among the West, but the subsequent years, it has been part of the West. Then you look at the rest of the districts. Then on this, from the same period, now you can look at in each of the years, 2021 to 2025, you can see the districts that did not perform well under the multidimensional poverty. We see that in 2021, NAPDAM had the worst, but if you get to 2025, Yonyo Nansua is the worst. Here, the overall best 10 performing districts on the average between the period 2021 and 2025. We see Ablekuma North municipality in the Greater Accra region being within the best 10 performing district throughout the 5 years period. And we can see the rest. Honorable Member of Parliament for Kole Clote, we can see that your constituency has been among the best performing districts in 4 out of the 5 years. It only missed 2021. They don't need any support. In fact, when we go into the detail, they said the devil, the board chair said that the devil is in the details. When we get into the detail, we begin to see the devil there. Yes. And one interesting thing we take note of is Asqua. Asqua, in fact, in 2021, Asqua was the best performing district, but it slipped. And it's only been in part of the best only in 2 years. That is 2020, yeah. 1 and 5, I think is. And we have the list of the districts who have performed well in each of the 5 years also listed here. It is important to note that nationally, the multidimensional poverty has improved from 24.3% to 23% in 2025. And what we have realized is that half of the regions have posted no district, okay, above the national average. That is, these regions. In 2025, all these 8 regions posted no district above the national average of 23%. Then we have these districts up here posting most of their districts above the national average. So it means that those are the regions that are driving the national average. You see Northeast posting all their districts, all their 6 districts across all the 5 years. Same with Savannah, same with OT. Then we see Northern region, almost the same. And Upper East, also almost the same, except in 2022, where. So these are the regions that are driving the national average upwards, and these ones are driving them downwards in 2025. Now look at the intensity. How poor are the poor? We are seeing that the country has performed overall very well in reducing multidimensional poverty. In fact, over a 5-year period, intensity has reduced by almost 10 percentage points from 51.2 to 41.9, which means that on the average, you are looking at what proportion of the 13 indicators we are using in Ghana. What proportion of these 13 indicators are districts performing in? And we can see that the maximum in 2021 was 51 and the minimum was 40.5. Then, if you come to 2025, the maximum is 41.9 and the minimum is 37, which means that some districts now are getting out of the multidimensional poverty. So in 2021, all the districts were in there, but now we are moving to a point where some districts are moving out. And the intensity can further be seen here between the period 2021 to 2025, the proportion of indicators that households are deprived in, or how poor the poor are, is reducing. But we can see that Upper East, for instance, moved from 44 to 39.3 as the minimum. And then the maximum from 51 to 41, 41, which means that there's great improvement in intensity of poverty in Upper East. Same if you look at Ahafo Northern and Volta, we see that. But what is important here is to note that almost all districts are reducing how poor the poor are. And that is very important. Now we look at the drivers and the contribution, and this is one of the areas we need to pay attention. We see that throughout the period, some indicators out of the 13 are actually been driving multidimensional poverty in Ghana. In 2021, employment was the highest driver of multidimensional poverty at 32.6%, followed by health insurance at 21.5%. Thereafter, employment started making progress. Health insurance got worse, which means that from 2022 through to 2025, what is driving multidimensional poverty in Ghana is health insurance coverage, which means it is one of the indicators that need a lot of attention. And this is across all the districts, and we'll see it in the detailed reports of the districts. Of course, we see that overcrowding and sanitation are also coming up. Overcrowding, if you look at 2025, it is also coming up. You look at sanitation, which is toilets up there, it's also going up in 2025. Now, at this point, we want to see the contributors of multidimensional poverty in some specific districts. And here we picked districts of some of the dignitaries we're expecting here today. So forgive me if your district is not shown, but you have the report, so you will see your district in. So here is the Minister for Finance district, Ejumako Enyan Esiem. You can see that health insurance was number 2 contributor of multidimensional poverty in 2021, and it has become number 1 in 2025. Health insurance coverage. So health insurance coverage is 35.3, followed by toilets, in 2025. But one important thing we observe, and I mentioned earlier, that nutrition, in the 2021 measure, we use mortality. If there was any child under 5 years in the household who passed on, or maternal mortality, then that was what we used in 2021. Subsequently, we moved to nutrition. So you realize that from 2021, we go to 2022, it jumped. So, but that's not a problem. But you can see that steadily, in the case of this district, nutrition has now come to 3.5 as the contribution to multidimensional poverty in this district. It means that this is very important for the district to use to target its policy interventions. We go to Efutu minority leaders constituency. The story is not the same. Sorry, the story is the same, right? Health insurance is again dominating. But over there is the previous one was employment, which was second, but here overcrowding is the number 2. Which means that In 2025, health insurance, overcrowding, toilet, and employment remain the high contributors of multidimensional poverty in Efutu municipality. And the issue of nutrition can still be seen here. And you can trace a lot of the other indicators to see where they were in 2021 and where they are now in 2025. The next one is Honorable Adongo. This is your constituency. So we can see that health insurance coverage is still high up there. It was number 2, and now it is number 1. And it's gotten worse over the period. And we see toilet is the second, followed by employment, overcrowding, school attendance, housing, and in the other. So school lag is actually the least, which means that children don't get repeated often. And so they are making progress there. The next one is, okay, we're expecting a minister of local government. And so we brought his constituency as well. So, yes, over there too, you can see the same story. Health insurance is on top, you know. So we see that. Honorable Senator, we have your constituency. So we can see that, yes, health insurance is also still the problem in that constituency as well. And we can see that if you take nutrition, it moved up and it's come down to 2.4, which means that we don't have a lot of children who are malnourished in the constituency relative to the other indicators. We're expecting Honorable Majority Leader also. So that is Honorable Majority Leader's constituency. The story is the same across all of the constituencies. Now, we will look at the district ranking. We have looked at each individual district. Now we're looking at the ranking. So we can see that the top 10 districts with high MPI. In fact, here, usually when you are number 1, you are happy. But in this particular case, number 1, you should not be happy. And what we see is that all the districts in the top 10 have moved from a relatively better performance in 2021 to a worse performance in 2025. You see the numbers here where we have the ranking in 2021. You can see that Karachi West was on number 62 in 2021. And now they have moved to number 9. So it means that they have moved to a relatively better number to a worse number. The same thing with Northeast, Bumpurugu, Napanduri. In 2021, they were on number 55 and 56, which was relatively better. Now they are on number 4. And it's the same for virtually all the districts in this top 10. They have all moved from a relatively better place to a worse place. What is important here is that for all of them, besides 2022, on each year, they've all seen reduction from the previous year. All of them. There have been reduction from the previous year. Besides the increases we see in 2022, from 2023 to 2025, each of these 10 districts have seen some improvement, and that is very important. Now, the bottom 10 districts. Usually when you are in the bottom, you are worried. But here, if you are in the bottom, That's where you are happy. And what is important here is that if you look at the bottom districts, I see Asqua in Ashanti region up there. You can see the head count for Asqua was 6.3%. Multidimensional poverty was 6.3 in 2021. It has declined to 5.6 in 2022, but Asqua has changed position from being the 261 district, which being the best performing district in 2021, to be the 252nd performing district in 2025. Swami Municipal in the Ashanti region has remained the same. Though they have made some improvement, they have remained the same. In 2021, 8.7%, they were on number 253, and they have remained on that same number at the end. In between, they changed small, but they went back. And then you look at Ayawaso North municipality in the Greater Accra region. They were on number 212 in 2021 with an MPI of 13.9%. And now they are on number 261. They took over where Asqua was in 2021 with a lower MPI. And what is also again important on this is that we realize that Ayawaso North municipality and Ayawaso Central municipalities are the two municipalities that did not see any increase throughout the 5 years. So you can see that there are only green arrows in all the years for those two districts, right, among the top 10. And so it means that those districts have seen progress throughout the period. Key takeaways. So this highlights multidimensional poverty in our country. And what we have seen today, we see that multidimensional poverty has declined in almost all districts. As the government statistician mentioned, 250 out of the 261 districts have recorded lower MPI headcount in 2025 as against 2021. Yonyo Nanswa recorded the highest multidimensional poverty in 2025. For more than half of the population of that district are multidimensionally poor. Northeast region dominates in multidimensional poverty in 2025. All the 6 districts in the region are among the top 10 in 2025. Ayawaso North municipality recorded the lowest multidimensional poverty incidence in 2025 with 5.5% of the population. So it means that between 5 and 6 people out of every 10, out of every 100 are multidimensionally poor. And we see that 7 of the 10 districts recorded the lowest MPI in the Greater Accra region. So if you take the top 10, 7 of them are in the Greater Accra region. The gap between the highest and the lowest district is wide. MPI ranges from 51.6% in Yonyo to 5.5% in Ayawaso North municipality. While West and Sechere Afram Plains recorded the highest reduction, and that's very important. They recorded the highest reduction in MP, in multidimensional poverty, recording 37.9 and 37 respectively, percentage points reduction respectively. The Guan district recorded the largest worsening in poverty. Its MPI increased from 28.1 in 2021 to 34.8 in 2025, a rise of 6.7 percentage points. District poverty is not evenly distributed, and that is what the data shows. In fact, all the 5 regions in the northern part of the country and Oti and Bono East have the highest multidimensional poverty. What we see is that if we are able to reduce multidimensional poverty, it impacts 11 out of the 17 SDGs through the indicators. SDG 1 is impacted. SDG 2, malnutrition, is impacted. SDG 3, which is health, is impacted. SDG 4, which is education, is impacted. SDG 5, which is gender equality, because you are measuring, as board chair requested, that we should disaggregate it. And we can actually do that. And so in the subsequent report, we will do so. And you can see that it's SDG 6, which is on water, is impacted. SDG 7, which is on electricity, energy, is impacted. SDG 8, which is on employment, is impacted. SDG 10, which is reduction of inequality. SDG 11, which is on housing, cities, and then SDG 16. So if we are able to reduce multidimensional poverty, the impact is great. Recommendations. District level poverty data must drive district level action. National and regional averages are not enough for better targeting. High poverty districts need priority attention. All districts in the Northeast region need to be reassessed for targeted interventions. I think that has already been mentioned. MMDAs should integrate the findings into their medium-term development plans. The ranking provide evidence for planning, budgeting, targeting, and monitoring. Resource allocation should reflect need. Districts with high and persistent MPI should be considered in public investment, social protection, and local development programming. Districts that show stalled improvement require quick intervention. Kintampo South, West Mamprusi, Sewiwi municipality, Asukwa municipality need closer monitoring, because these are districts that performed well previously and are slipping, so we need to pay attention to them. Progress is feasible for high poverty districts. While West and Setre, Afram Plains, and these others, Kwewu, Afram Plains, North, Nabdam, and Central Gonja have demonstrated that large reductions can happen. So peer learning may be instituted to help those that are far behind. The conclusion, the district poverty ranking shows where progress has been made, where poverty is worsening, and where improvement has stalled. The next step is clear. Let's use the evidence to target resource allocation, support districts that are falling behind, and ensure that poverty reduction reaches every part of Ghana. This may be the point where the private sector may want to rely on the findings to realign their CSP to support government efforts in poverty reduction in the country. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And we have the QR codes for the last two, for both the ranking and the districts, so that each of us can see our district report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Omar, for that presentation. And also for reminding us that this is one of the only instances where being number one doesn't mean you're actually winning. But as Honorable Isaac Adongo mentioned earlier, the purpose of today's findings is not to rank districts, but rather to guide action and inform policy. Please permit me, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to make a few more acknowledgements. We have Mr. Uto Fleku, Deputy Chief Investigator for SRAJ. Mr. Fleku, hi. You're welcome, sir. We also have representatives from the National Development Planning Commission. Hello, NDPC. Are we represented? You're welcome. We also have Mr. Zakaria Yakubu, Head of Programs for Care International Ghana. Mr. Zakaria Yakubu. Okay. Moving on. At this point, we will duly launch the official publications for today. I would like to invite Honorable Jerry Ahmed Shaib to join us on stage, Honorable Isaac Adongo, Dr. Yaoba, Dr. Alhassan Idrisu, Honorable Zenato Rawlings, Dr. Rashid Draman, Mr. Brian Chipo, Mr. Kwesi Obing, and finally Mr. Ni Odoi Odote to join us on stage as we launch the report.
Oh, I'm the one like it. So let's find one of let's
That's a senior man.
Who? Chief. Go and launch it for us.
Oh, am I the one to launch it? No, wait. That's who is launching it?
Oh no, you launch. You have to launch. Yeah.
My vice president.
I think you should even let her launch.
No, vice president. No, first public assignment. Yeah.
Then, do the same thing. Yeah. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached a very important stage. The district level multidimensional poverty and ranking publications, we have all heard the value that it brings to government policy and to our civil society who are working to improve the lives of our people. We hope that when we leave here, this document will become very instrumental in all the planning and resource allocation activities that we do. I therefore have the singular honor on behalf of the majority leader to declare the district level multi-dimensional poverty and ranking publication duly launched.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful. Yes.
Yes, please, I'll hold them.
So just announce.
Yes, please. Hi, please, can we come back upstage and ask honorable members present to also join us for a group photo? Yes, please. Thank you very much. Please give them a hand of applause. We have now come to the panel discussion segment of today's program. Over the course of today's presentation, we have heard important reflections on the district level multidimensional poverty findings and what they reveal about disparities that continue to exist across districts and communities. This session will actually move the presentation from just the findings to explore the realities that this means for planning and action. And so to help us unpack this, we have our panelists with us. Our first panelist is Mr. Ni Odoi Odote, Principal Planning Analyst at the Development Policy Division of the NDPC. His work focuses on development planning, policy coordination, and strengthening planning systems to support inclusive national development. Mr. Odote, please join us on stage. Yes, please. We are also joined by Mr. Brian Chipo, Acting Director of the Research, Statistics, and Information Management Directorate as the Office of the Head of Local Government Service. He is an experienced development planning and information management professional with extensive expertise in local governance research and research. Mr. Chipo, please join us on stage. And finally, we are joined by Mr. Kwesi Obeng of Oxfam International, a global organization working to reduce poverty and inequality through advocacy, humanitarian response, and sustainable development interventions. Mr. Obeng, please take a seat. Distinguished guests, I'm pleased to announce that I'll be your moderator for this session as well. I'm Taima. You are all warmly welcome. And before we begin today's discussion, I actually have a small plea to my panelists. This multidimensional poverty affects all of Ghanaians, both small, big, literate, illiterate. So I would actually ask that we break down our language to the level where every Ghanaian can understand when they follow this discussion. So thank you very much. So for our opening, I would ask for our reflections. Before we move into the thematic discussion, I'd like us to begin with a brief reflection from each of our panelists. Since the multi-dimensional poverty data forces us to confront these realities that can sometimes be hidden underneath national averages, I would like for you to just briefly tell us how revealing these findings have been, how revealing it's been throughout presentations, from speeches to the actual presentation. How revealing has it been all across? I'll start with you, Mr. Odu.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. So personally, this report or these reports really highlight the fact that poverty is multidimensional in nature, as has been rightly pointed out through the presentation and the many speeches. But what really stands out for me is the fact that we really need to institutionalize evidence-based and targeted development planning. I think some of the speakers earlier pointed out the fact that sometimes decision makers make decisions without really having the hard evidence. And so now districts really are empowered to be able to make evidence-based decisions because we have the data. We know which districts are suffering the most. We also know what is causing the suffering, mostly through the various indicators that we saw. Health insurance surprisingly stood out for me, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. But I think three things really I could just mention stood out for me. That multidimensional poverty is cumulative. You see that there are so many dimensions that were considered. And for somebody to be considered multidimensionally poor, they needed to be considered in more than 33% of those indicators. So you are deprived in 3, 4, 5 different areas, and this really worsens the living standards of people. Secondly, I think the territorial inequalities, as was rightly pointed out, very worrying to see some of the regions, all the 5 northern regions, but especially Northeast, and then also seeing pockets of multi-dimensional poverty, even in the southern regions where we think that those issues are not so prominent. So it really shows that there's still a lot of work to be done. And then third for me was that even though we may see progress at the national level, if we don't actually dig in to see the subnational level, the regional and district level, we may easily assume we are doing well, whereas some districts will actually getting worse off. So these are my initial responses to the findings from these reports.
Thank you very much, Mr. Odwe. Mr. Kwesi.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, I think every aspect of what we've heard today is fascinating. For one, I am particularly fascinated by the methodology and the fact that we've tried to domesticate it. So it's not just simply an external sense of what a picture should look like, but we've added what we think are critical to our country. And coming back to the real findings, I mean, I think one of the things my brother just said is the spatial dimension of inequality. We've always known this, but we thought all these years we've been doing some amount of work, but I think this report has proven that we still have got a long way to go to bridge the gap between the North and the South. That for me, I think is stark. And I think that this is a time because not only for me does it show this starkness, but then also what exactly we ought to be targeting, what exactly we ought to be fixing. And I think it provides particularly our administrators, but then also the political class, the ammunition to really push and drive down inequality in our countries. I don't want to belabor the points because I think we'll move into the substantive discussion. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chipo.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity. Today has been very exciting because now you can say that we have reasons to be very specific in our development interventions. Most of the times, our national efforts are quite general, and interventions are developed and implemented with very generic understanding of what Ghana really needs. But now we have evidence to be very specific in terms of addressing our issues. And what really was even striking is also the fact that even in urban space, there are still pockets of poverty. And as much as we are talking about the northern regions and all that, we should still not lose fact that even within our urban space where the numbers still look good, there are still pockets in there. So we should be very careful and also target very well. Now, we have to have a conversation about how resources are distributed. I mean, this is really a wake-up call. Resources should not be really distributed evenly, but equitably, depending on what the needs of each assembly is. And that this will be my initial comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these reflections. I think it is actually framing that these disparities can actually disappear during national narratives. But then these district level conversations are actually helping us narrow down and seeing fully what is happening in our smaller communities and even literally households that we have here in Ghana. So we'll move to our first theme, our very first area of discussion, which focuses on understanding poverty beyond the national averages. And again, I'll begin with you, Ms. Dani Odoi. One of the findings presented earlier showed that although 250 out of Ghana's 261 districts reductions in multidimensional poverty in 2021 and 2025, which means 93 districts still remain above the national district average. What does this tell us about the nature of inequality and uneven development across districts in Ghana?
Thank you very much. So once again, as you pointed out, there has been significant progress across most of the districts in Ghana. But obviously, the pace at which we are seeing this improvement is inadequate. I remember one of the statistics when looking at all the 6 districts in Northeast. Some of them were not even in the top 10 of the West performing. And yet, despite the improvements you saw in most of them from 2023, I think, coming to 2025, other districts performed better than them, and therefore they ended up being in the worst performing. But it really highlights that we still have a lot of work to do. Having over half of the people in a district being multidimensionally poor is very worrying. Just 2 years ago, my colleague who is here with me, we actually went to Union Nanswa, and just seeing the district assembly office alone was depressing. And from that office, we went to a community. I can't remember the name of the community, but the drive there was atrocious. It was the road was not good at all. And obviously, there are very stark reminders that there's a lot of deprivation that is going on in some of these communities. Just accessing a health facility, for example, can take a community more than 30 minutes, 1 hour. And imagine if there's an emergency. The roads are bad, there's very little transportation, electricity access is problematic. In the rainy season, access to some of these services becomes even worse. And so really the inequalities that we see are a stark reminder that there's a lot more that we need to do. Despite the improvements in most districts, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but there are still 11 districts that's actually got worse. And that's really for those districts, those in the district, the MP, more work needs to be done to really diagnose what the problems are, because if we don't resolve it, I think as one of my panelists mentioned, we could actually create a bomb in future where the youth and others will become very frustrated. And so we need to pay more attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Which means regardless of the improvements we are seeing, we shouldn't relax. We should be able to catch up and get every district on equal and even development. Thank you very much. To Mr. Chipo, to the find. I mean, during the GSS speech, he mentioned that Ghana has now, for the first time, Ghana has now multidimensional poverty estimates consistently throughout since 2021. Yes. So from a planning perspective, I would like to know how transformative this level of district level evidence is for national development planning and targeting.
All right, thank you very much. So for the question, and yes, NDPC is here, but coming from the local government service, I think this is very important. The MMDAs are responsible for local development. They are responsible for the planning. That's the medium-term plan, annual action plans. So this really becomes a foundational data source for prioritization. What is important now is to look at how best we can get the districts to really use this data. It will require capacity building, it will require coordination, it will require monitoring of a lot of institutions at the national and the regional levels as well to ensure that districts are really going to use the data. Now, beyond using the data for planning, implementation will also be very key. It will require for the Common Fund administration to also look at this data to really influence how the formulas are developed so that it reflects what really the district needs to resolve. Because with the current arrangement, if you really have to commit about, let's say, 40% of your fund to, deal with the issue of toilet, but then the formula gives you only 10%, it means that you are really stuck. So we really have to now look at the formula and see how best that can be done. And I'm happy that the honorable members are here and they are very much involved in that conversation. They can add their voice to see how best we make allocation of funding very targeted. What is key is that the district assemblies, this data will be shared. Honorable Minister for the Honorable Deputy Minister for Finance has indicated support to GSS to send this data across the regions, and which means that the data will be disseminated, not just dissemination, but district will be trained on how to use the data to now plan. Then after planning, the resources that follow should also be targeting so that we can really get the development done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chico, I'll stay with you. So we saw that there were districts that were actually seeing reduced multidimensional poverty. Wa West actually reduced from 61.9% in 2021 to 24% in 2025. But then we saw that the Guan district had actually worsened over that same period. So from a local government perspective, I would want to know what explains this progress, but then not for some. I mean, if we are seeing progress for some, everyone should be going along. Yeah, so why that disparity?
Okay, thank you very much. It will be difficult to just give you a straightforward answer, but what it will require is that we need to do further studies into the data. There are other variables that are outside this study, which needs to look at to see exactly what resulted in the increase or decrease in these numbers. So this is a baseline study. All the districts should really now pick this data and try to explain why there is increase or decrease. And this is also an opportunity for CSOs, research institutions, to go deep into the data to see how best we can make meaning out of it. It is very key for all of us to be on board. I mean, it's a wake-up call. It's not always that when you see an increase, it means that the district assembly is doing well or not. There are several other institutions within the areas that helps. Now, if you have a district that has a lot of security challenges over a period of time, and now the security issues have been resolved, it brings in so much economic development that also affects aspect of what we call it poverty. So there might be the need to do further studies to understand why there is increase or decrease in these lines. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kwesi Obing, I am here for you now. So this question is a little bit personal and close to my heart because it's from the Northeast region. I stayed in the Northeast region for about 3 years. That was home for 3 years. It's actually a very interesting region to stay, but then subsequent reports and findings seem to actually indicate that there are worse situations in the Northeast region. Maybe I can attest to that fact. So I want you to just break down to what extent, right? Let me just frame this for you. The Uyo district actually recorded the highest poverty incidence with 51%, 51.6%, and Ayawaso North Municipal recorded the lowest at 5.5%. I want to know to what extent should these disparities influence how national resources, infrastructure, and social interventions are prioritized?
Thanks very much. So your question is very interesting, but I'm not evading. I'll come to responding to your question. I think for me, the bottom line in all of this, it's really about how we finance our country's development. So now we have the data. We know what the problems are. Our political class will tell us we don't have the resources. So one of the solutions, we do have solutions, thankfully. It's not within the scope of the current report, but I think that we'll come back to discuss one of them essentially. And I'll just give this and then respond to your question. One of them, we think, is the issue of, taxation of wealth in our country. I mean, we've done some numbers in Oxfam, and it's incredible how much we are able to raise if we just simply improve the tax systems, particularly with respect to taxation of wealth in this country. And we could invest so much of that into tackling the sort of abject poverty that this report is showing us. So back to your question, I mean, one of the arguments we also make consistently, and across all the countries that we work in, is that inequality is not divine ordained. it's a lie if anybody tells you. It's really a matter of public policy choice. Um, if you decide to invest, as the evidence has shown, if you decide to invest your resources in tackling these indicators, obviously you would address multidimensional poverty. And so to respond to your question, the divergence clearly shows that in some parts of our country, we're not investing in what is dear and critical to our people. And we need to change that mindset. And of course, some districts are deprived by way of distance and then also natural resources and the like. I mean, if you have close to half of investments staying in Accra, effectively very little has to go around to improve um, the quality of life and infrastructure in these districts. And so I think we need to also encourage diversification and also investment beyond Accra and the other big cities as we've shown, because obviously the development appears to be more in the south of the country, where the bulk of our natural resources and then also more of both state but then also private investment tends to stay. I think, and I recall very well, as a young boy in the 90s, one particular president encouraging investment beyond, the South, beyond Accra. I think we need to get back and push that agenda so that we can spread development. And I think, and that's one of the things that I draw from this report, and in terms of the gaps, not a gap, but I think something that we need to do post is what exactly is it that, let's say, Ayawaso North has done to improve or to maintain, the quality or at least its rankings throughout the 5 years? It's not quite clear yet, but I think the next level is for us to really distill what exactly they did, how they did it, and what is it that Yonyo Nansoa, for example, can borrow or learn from. So we don't reduce the conversation just simply around finance, but then also the how, I think, is very important. And then we back it with the resources and of course the technical know-how to be able to deliver on the needs of our citizens. The last point I really want to make is that from our research in the Sahel, and because Northeast is also fairly close to that part of our world, often is seen as a security issue. It's not. All the evidence points to the fact that it's really an issue of poverty and inequality. And so if you address these, you actually eliminate one of the drivers of conflict. And so I think we should see this in a more holistic way, beyond just simply tackling this. But once we manage to address the scale of poverty in our country, we'll be actually killing, to use a tired phrase, many birds with just one stone, just simply addressing multidimensional inequality. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. What really stands out from this part of the discussion and what I'm hearing repeatedly is that we need to position our institutions adequately to respond to what the evidence reveals. We also see that we've seen the findings, we have heard the findings, but then we need further probing to understand the disparities. And finally, we need to encourage development beyond the South so that we can reach our rural areas too. Thank you very much. So this naturally brings us to the question of planning, implementation, and service delivery. Mr. Kwesi Obing, I know I ended with you, but I'll begin with you again. So one of the findings presented earlier showed that the 6 districts with highest multidimensional poverty incidence in Ghana in 2025 are all located in the Northeast region. So this is just for emphasis. What should the findings like these trigger in practical terms when it comes to planning and targeting? I mean, we mentioned earlier, but then just to cement for planning and then targeting, what does this mean for us?
So it's quite clear our work is cut out in terms of what needs to be done. I mean, Dr. Umar pointed out where these districts are lagging. And so I think we need to take these issues and draw lessons from the ones that have maintained a certain level of consistency and improve the capacity of the district assemblies and invest the necessary resources. I think we should not see this as a competition, because if a district in Northeast improves, it's to the benefit of our country. And so I like that phrase, and the point about this is not a competition. This is to help us to really see what needs to be done. And so I think that this should, for me, I think the fact that it gives us a picture, because often when we talk about poverty, we just talk about, do people just have the minimum wage, or the yeah, do they have the minimum to buy food? But I think what it tells us is that to be able to address this multidimensional inequality, there are different facets, and we need to have a holistic outlook. And then also, we should be determined. I think one of the lessons I'm drawing from this is that for us to be successful, we need to be consistent. If we look at it within just a 4-year time frame, I think we'll miss the point. We need to be consistent. We need to look into the future, into the medium term, maybe 10 years, and see how and push our resources and time and see how much we can actually move towards this. Just 2 years ago, barely 2 years, in December 2024, the African Union, as part of its second 10-year implementation plan of the Agenda 2063, adopted two very important targets. One is to reduce inequality by 15%, and then poverty by 20%. I think this report positions Ghana as one of the leaders to really achieve that goal. Because at the moment, the African Union is trying to figure out how to encourage African governments to achieve these goals. It hasn't quite figured. And I think that Ghana can pull this out and offer a sense and a lesson to how we can actually collectively address multidimensional inequality and achieve these targets. And I think that we could possibly do this by 2030. We don't have to wait to 2034, I think. Yeah. So I think that this report offers us the meat. We need to back this with the commitment and the resources to drive, because this is not rocket science. Far from it. These are fundamentals. In fact, if you're talking about governance, these are basics. We know back in 1992, when we returned to constitutional rule, we were promised a democratic dividend. These were the dividends that people were promised. And so if after all these years we haven't delivered, actually we should be pretty ashamed of ourselves. I'll end it there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Obin. Mr. Neil Odoi, I would want your perspective here from decentralized planning. Where do you think the disconnect lies between evidence, planning, and measurable outcomes?
So one of the key challenges at the decentralized level is coordination. We often think of it as a national sectoral issue, but there is real coordination issues even at the district level. And of course, one very important initiative that was brought up to try and address this was the integrated social services, which Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection leads on, basically bringing together all very important key sectors to see how they can better coordinate and collaborate. And one of the key things that is needed is obviously better targeting, as has been highlighted. So at the district level, of course, we encourage them to have very comprehensive plans that prioritize to address the needs of the districts. But most times these issues are multidimensional in nature. So if you identify a problem and you only use maybe the health sector or the education sector to try and address it, in itself, that will probably not resolve the issue. We need to bring all these together. Of course, we have, over the last decade or so, been trying to produce the Ghana National Household Registry, which is basically a database of all the vulnerable people across the country. I think these reports are going to be very useful to complement this national household registry, because it helps us move away from the universal approach and the trickle down, the kind of economics that we often see, where we think if we just do something across the country, it will somehow reach the poorest of the poor. Of course, we always think of the SDG motto, leave no one behind. If you're not deliberate about actually targeting communities, targeting households, and targeting individuals within those households, then we would still come back maybe 5 years from now and realize we are still far off from the target. So NDPC is trying to encourage districts to better plan for these kind of issues, make it more integrated. So all the relevant sectors need to collaborate, need to work together to be able to address an issue. But also, as has been seen, the poverty indicators, some of them are contributing to poverty much more than others. So when a district picks up one of these reports, they need to actually assess which areas do we need to prioritize. We do need extra funding. There's no doubt about that, but the fiscal space is constrained. So how do we make sure that with the limited resources that we have available, we try and achieve the greatest impact? And that is why looking at some of these indicators, then we see that no, instead of trying to do everything at the same time, maybe for a period of time, let's focus on 2, 3, or 4 indicators, and you bring in other sectors to try and contribute to that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Odote. Mr. Chipo, reports such as these are often launched with strong recommendations. When Mr. Omar ended, he ended with very strong recommendations. Yet implementation gaps persist over time. From the perspective of local government service, what makes it difficult for district level evidence to consistently translate into sustained actions within districts?
All right, thank you very much. So obviously the points have been made clearly that resources will be one of the key issues to really look at or using to deal with the situation. So resources is one. Coordination, as my colleague from NDPC mentioned, is also a very key issue. The various indicators are actually found under different sectors. And these are sectors having their own ministers and institutions and all that. So it's important to understand how these coordination mechanism that exists will be strengthened. So the coordination mechanism exists. When you go to the district level, there is a steering committee or there's a committee at the district assembly for health and education, social services and all that. So members of the assembly gets to discuss these issues. Now, some of the departments in our decentralization agenda are yet to be decentralized, and therefore their issues are not very much owned by the assembly. So when you take health and education, yes, assembly's highest investments are into either building a school or a chip compound or a clinic. But the sector itself, the districts are not able to own the entire value chain. So it's important to understand how these issues affect development at a local level. So that is another one, coordination. And then capacity building. Now, we know the issues, but do we have the requisite staff in terms of capacity, in terms of numbers to deliver on these issues? So that is also one thing that needs to be done. Now, the Office of the Head of Local Government Services is very much responsible for this, but it also depends on the fiscal space to allow the service to recruit a lot more staff to fill in the gaps that will be required to deliver on these services. So this is a wake-up call. The Deputy Minister for Finance was here. He's also intrigued. And I'm very sure that based on this, some justification could be made for very critical staff within these indicators to be recruited to really solve them. I'm sure if I should show you data from the local government service in terms of the regions or the district that did not perform, their staff capacity will also be low. So it's important that we look at the other variables that are not necessarily part of this analysis to also see what is really contributing to it. And from our side, capacity is one, coordination is one, and then the resource allocation is also going to be one. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. From this theme from this particular discussion, we see that strengthened coordination and collaboration is needed across all sectors. And we also need to stay targeted so that no one is left behind in the development of Ghana. We also need consistency and continuity across the country. Mr. Chipo just mentioned that we need resources. We also need capacity building to also see the actualization and development of districts in Ghana. At this point, we will would move to focus on accountability, inclusion, and what happens after we launch publications such as these. Mr. Odoy, I would like to find out that we saw that one recurring pattern in development conversation is that districts appear repeatedly in discussions around deprivation. Some districts, they keep being repeated all the time around deprivation and vulnerability. Based on these findings, which district or population do you believe now require the most urgent and deliberate policy action? Just
Okay, so regionally, obviously, the 5 northern regions, especially northeast region, the 6 districts that are there. But I'm going to take it more from the sectoral approach. Clearly, we still have gaps when it comes to health insurance, and health insurance is very important. Without health insurance, then families will have to pay out of pocket, and out of pocket expenditure for families that are already resource constrained is going to limit the uptake of health services, or they will use alternative methods to try and resolve their health issues, which often has complications, as we especially see around issues of maternal mortality. Many delay in going to health facilities when the woman is pregnant because they may not have access to health insurance, or they fear that they'll have to pay and they don't have payments. And so the very complex issue that needs to be addressed. Health insurance has been free for indigents. The National Health Insurance Authority has a category known as indigents, who are basically those who are identified as being vulnerable and poor, and it's free for them. How is it that we still have over 40% of citizens in this country who do not have health insurance? That's a significant proportion of the country, and that obviously reflects in the figures that we see. Health insurance was a big contributor to the multidimensional poverty across almost every district that was sampled. Of course, there are other areas like access to toilet services. We still have areas where open defecation is an issue. As sad as that is to confess, in 2026, even in urban areas like Greater Accra, I'm sure some of us have passed by a big gutter and seen some people relieving themselves. That is not appropriate. So even if in big cities like Accra, toilet facilities are inadequate, we can just imagine what the situation is in the more rural communities. And so these are just 2 examples of specific groups of people who do not have access to health insurance and people who do not have access to toilet facilities, who we need to pay extra attention to. I remember when Ghana completed the Millennium Development Goals in 2015, the one area that stood out as probably the biggest failure in our ability to meet the Millennium Development Goals was the area of sanitation. And somehow it is still one of the biggest issues. We are not doing so well when it comes to the SDGs. We have about 4.5 years left. So these are areas that we really need to invest in. We have a number of initiatives like the toilet for all and things that have been implemented over the years. And yet somehow we still have serious shortages in these areas. So more needs to be done. District assemblies, I believe, needs to be perhaps judged based on their performance in some of these things. Maybe the MCEs, the DCEs need to be part of their contracts, performance-based contracts, needs to align to these indicators that we are analyzing in the multidimensional poverty, so that we can better hold them accountable to ensure that these issues are addressed.
thank you very much. Mr. Obing, I will end with you before we move to questions and answers. Beyond government, what role should civil society, the media, academia, and citizens themselves play in sustaining pressure for action and follow through?
Thanks very much, Madam Moderator. I think the wealth of knowledge we can explore from this piece of work is enormous. And I think for academia, as well as researchers and also CSOs, I think this is incredible because it's a sort of disaggregation that for years we've been trying to push our government to lead on, because the government has the capacity to reach all the 261 districts at a go, as Ghana Statistical Service has done, and I think it's tremendous, and I think it's worth applauding, to use your phrase, your earlier phrase. So I think the world in the last couple of years seem to have changed dramatically. The sort of external support that countries like ours could expect does not exist anymore, because of the changing nature of the relations between countries. So many of our partners are actually moving away from aid to trade. And so it requires us to take another look at our trade relations and our trade policy. So, because one of the things we're coming away with is the fact that we need the fiscal space, we need to raise the fiscal resources to allow us to be able to meet the needs that have been put forward by this report in terms of addressing multidimensional inequality. I think all of these actors, development partners, civil society, and also academia and researchers, we can actually work together to help districts, to help GSS, to help the government to further drill and support these districts, particularly those that are lagging behind, to pull their weight. I mean, the last thing I would say is that I think we need to encourage institutions like GSS to continue to do this, because this is priceless. Because you cannot develop if you don't have the sort of data to drive your public policy. Otherwise, you'll be flying blind, and we know what happens to flying blind. So I think we need to encourage more. And so I was quite impressed with the Deputy Finance Minister's pledge, even before he sought the minister's approval, that GSS would be supported to continue to do this, because we need this to allow all of us to plug in to address the gaps that we've seen this morning, and I think it's tremendous. And I think one last thing though is that when I saw the program, what struck me was, okay, where is the district? I mean, the people. So I was expecting to see one of us being somebody from, let's say, the Northeast. But that's it. Of course, you're representing them, so I'll cut the slack. Thanks very much.
Very well. Yeah, I am. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We now have clear directions as to how to who to target, what population to target, and how the media, academia, and even citizens themselves can help actualize development in their districts. And we'll take a few questions, just about 3 questions. Honorable Zaneto.
Thank you very much. I think I'm concerned about one thing. I haven't heard anything about consequence management. And I think that is our biggest weakness, because we have reports, we have data, we have the statistics, but I'm not hearing anyone being penalized for not doing what they are meant to do. If we have, for example, GSS does this countrywide tour, they visit all the districts. And now districts cannot claim ignorance with regards to the issues around multidimensional poverty. Are there going to be penalties in place for districts that don't align their budgets to the obvious? I'm looking for something that says, if we've spent all of this money to do all of this research, and people are not using it, what is the consequence of that? Because otherwise we're wasting taxpayers' money. And this is my concern, consequence management.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Dr. Draman. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I have a question for Elijah Omar. And in his presentation, I think on nutrition, he talked about stunting, and so on. But I didn't hear obesity, because today I think that's even more of a problem than because when people have more body index, I think is a marker of a health problem than when people don't have weight. So I don't know where you are on that.
Please, let's take the first two concerns first. Mr. Chipo, okay.
All right. Thank you very much for the question, Honorable. I must say that there are several platforms to manage performance of our MMDAs. The platforms exist. The difficulties are that what do we do when we realize that a district do not perform? Sometimes it requires the highest level of authority, especially Parliament, to sometimes crack the whip. For us, the local government service, we have the performance contract. We have developed, or we came out with a number of reports indicating how districts are performing on specific indicators. Normally, the punishment part is what is difficult, and I must say that it is a space that maybe we all have to look at how best to work on, because some of the suggestions that came up for punishment, we realized really will not work. Issues of, let's say, demotion. And let me give you an example. When you work in a district, it takes several months for an activity to really be delivered and to see results. So at the time that you are realizing that a district is not performing on an indicator, the team that you are assessing at the point were not the ones that caused the problem, because some officers might have, let's say, gone on retirement, or other officers might have come in. So there's always that difficulty, because officers don't stay at one location for so long. But then their performance appraisals, individual performance appraisals, are also a data set that can also be relied on to know whether officers are not performing. What I'm just trying to say is that the opportunity is there. There is the data of how officers are performing, how districts are performing. We might have to look at how best to now use the outcome of these platforms to punish. And it's up to the highest authorities to decide on that. So reward and punish. So for rewards, I think for the local government service a couple of years ago, I think around 2018-19, districts that perform well in our performance contract, some of them had opportunity to travel to South Africa for some programs. Some people receive laptops, motorbikes. Depending on the kind of capacity we have to reward, we made an attempt. The question is that what can we do more? And our capacity has a certain limit. What can all of us do to reward them better? But for me, the punishment really is what I think is also key. We have the D-part assessment, which the Ministry of Local Government has. Results come out, and we know districts who perform get more money. Who do not perform, maybe their funds, they do not get as much as the district that perform. But there's an opportunity. How do we take this and then say that somebody should be punished? Just to add to the, for a chief executive, have the ultimate responsibility on all the variables in this analysis. So, you about health, he cannot take ownership. Education aspect of it, he can take ownership, because other law says that somebody else is responsible. So we really have to look at all this and see how best we can strengthen our legal frameworks, have us assess this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I'll walk to Mr. Omar so that he answers.
Thank you very much. The question reminds me of a conversation that occurred in 2015 after the SDGs were adopted. The UN put together an expert group to come up with a framework for monitoring. That's the indicators. And during that discussion, the issue of malnutrition, measurement of malnutrition, which previously had been relied on the three indicators, that's underweight, stunted, and wasted. Then there were a number of countries who said, no, we need to include obesity because it is also one of the issues of malnutrition. And so after a long debate, we eventually added it. So it's been added. But what we realize is that it affects more of adult persons above the 5 years than those below 5 years. Obesity is there even for children, and malnutrition in this case is measured for persons below 5 years. So it is more of a problem of the older ages than the lower age. That is why you don't find it here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the next set of questions. Kindly state your name and then ask your question briefly.
Bless you. Yeah, thank you. I have a few comments, others by way of contribution. I was just whispering to Doctor, the statistician, just yesterday at my constituency in Tampon North, a young man with health insurance and monetary and valuation officer accompanied them to register some of their people at a community. And out of the 400 people who queued, only 20 people were they able to register because of network challenges. So that is one of the factors. Let's look into that issue. Network connectivity being a headache for the health insurance authority to be able to capture, if not government by way of policy, is almost registering a lot of people or everyone. But network connectivity is one of the challenges. So let's look at that aspect. I'm from education, a member of the committee of the vice chair. My chairman sends his greetings. He has traveled, he would have been here in person. One of our sin as a nation and as parliament is, have we been able to influence allocation for the FQ, free compulsory universal basic education, in full? We are saying education is free, it's compulsory, it's universal. Are the facilities there for everybody to attend? Northeast. Let's go to the schools there. Do we have a full basic education structure in a community? I'm talking of day nursery block, basic 6, JSS block. Do you have the full complement of a basic school in most of our northern region schools? No. An NGO goes to put up 3 classroom block, and then about 11 kilometers away, they go and put up a junior high school. And these things are causing drops out. And definitely, if people cannot have a full fledged of basic education facility, they drop out, and poverty becomes one of the issues. Most people who drop out become the females, the girls. In no time, they pick seat because of distance, or somebody is favoring them because of distance with a bicycle. The next moment, they are impregnating this young lady. So please, can we relook at those things? Government statistician, governments of the whole of West Africa must come together and say, if we are building school infrastructure, it must be a whole cluster from day nursery to basic, so that we have the full. And these are some of the reasons why the city centers, you see people performing more than the rural areas until we do some of these things. Of course, the present administration, they are doing their best. The school infrastructure we are building, they are adding teacher dabre, or what do you call teacher quarters. If not, that's another problem. Teachers don't stay in school because they don't have a place to stay to sleep. So let's look at all this holistically. Nutrition, my last. I ate tubani, walulu, beans, a very nutritious food. we want to tell ourselves that the white man has a better nutrition than we Africans? The Catholics came into the north and they were giving us blend. They started with hospitals, isn't it? They brought us wheat. They brought us blend. The blend can be prepared now with soya beans, mix out with our own palulu and our nutrition is fixed. We are sitting down talking of malnutrition. Let's get back and educate our people. Let's get back there. Let's tell them beans, farm more beans, feed the children with beans, feed them with our palulu, bambaram beans. Yes, we shouldn't wait for Kosi Bruni to bring us these things and talk of malnutrition. We have them. Let's get back, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable.
Flo?
Yes, please. Briefly, Honorable, briefly.
I'm not talking Palulu. So. The difficulty I have here is that the government statisticians, what you do is to tell us the result of our work. But we are discussing as if you are doing the work. The people who are supposed to take your input to inform policy and action are not in this room. Most of them are not in this room. At least local government should be here. Minister of Health should be here. And all the major policy makers should be here. So we can ask them, what are they doing about the findings that you have made, the results you have brought about their work? Then they can answer us, but they are not here. You and I are now labeling deficiencies that we have found in the system as though they are deficiencies of the Ghana Statistical Service. It's not. They have only brought you your terminal report. If you don't like it, you change it. That's what you have done, isn't it? So if you tell me that a major problem in my constituency is sanitation, my assemblies are building public toilets and thinking that they are solving the problem. But from your methodology, that is not the solution. I remember a couple of years ago, I think 2020, 2015, thereabout, the Greater Accra Sanitation Program used to be called, is it Gamma? The government took a loan from the World Bank and built household facilities. It is part of the reason you are seeing most of these communities in Greater Accra are scoring highly in that area, which means that this has to be a clearly targeted intervention. Because if you ask the assemblies to build toilets in their community, they don't have money to put toilets in every household. So what they will end up doing is to do the things that do not really deliver much in terms of the outcome. So it is a policy intervention that the Minister for Local Government, if we were here, would have taken that into account in how he distributes or works with the common fund, so that the common fund can provide support to the assemblies and put together an arrangement that allows community toilets to be phased out. Of course, in certain communities like markets or where you have larger numbers, when people get out of their houses, they need to take care of themselves. But when they are in the house, they shouldn't leave the house at 12 midnight, and be going to a public toilet when anything can happen on the way. So there has to be a clear policy intervention in that area. The other challenge I have is that if the Minister for Health were here, I would have asked him, now that in my constituency they say health insurance is the problem, and you are bringing, what do you call it, free primary health care, what is the implication for health financing that traditionally health insurance was addressing? In which case, you may actually be eliminating insurance as a component for measuring the delivery of health services in my constituency. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So that is also a policy question that we need to address. But then we also need to have a mechanism that allows us to compel governments to be accountable for what they say they will do and the targets that they set. So having given the results, government should be able to set targets that I want to be able to achieve these targets in these areas that drive poverty. Then we can hold government accountable for delivering and achieving those targets, so that in future when we come back here, we don't see somebody sitting at the top and eventually coming back to the. There was somebody like one of the districts you showed. When the world is moving forward, they are going anti-clockwise. You know, when that happens, it means that government failed. Because government should have told us where you are taking these people from this year to next year. Then next year, when we come and they are retrogressing, we'll ask you, why are they retrogressing? The community may say that you did not provide the resources you agreed. If you go and sign performance contract with an MC and you have not given him money for sanitation, how can you punish him? Do you get the point? So there must be a system in place to ensure that we put our money where our mouths are. And then people must be held accountable if they then don't deliver those services, so that incrementally we'll see improvement over the years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable. That is all the time we have for questions, but of course, the discussion doesn't end here. Will be further engagements to gain clarity and take action. And to our panelists, thank you very much for this engaging and important discussion. A few themes that have emerged strongly throughout this discussion is the importance of district level evidence, the need for stronger institutional response systems, the challenge of translating evidence into implementation, the importance of targeted interventions, and finally, the importance of accountability in ensuring that multidimensional poverty findings lead to measurable outcomes within communities. Thank you very much. On behalf of the service, I'd like to thank you, my panelists. Thank you. Kindly give them a round of applause as they take their seats. We will now take the closing remarks from the government statistician, Dr. Alhassan Idrisu. Please welcome him.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me stand on existing protocols to deliver these brief closing remarks. As we bring today's important national event to a close, let me begin by expressing sincere appreciation to all our speakers, our panelists, and participants for the rich, thoughtful, and action-oriented contributions made throughout the program. Today's discussions have enforced one important message: data must lead action. The district level multidimensional poverty rankings and fact sheets are not just statistical publications. They are practical tools for national transformation. For the first time in the history of our country, we now have comparable multidimensional poverty estimates for all 261 districts consistently over multiple years. This gives Ghana a clearer understanding of where poverty is deepest, a clearer understanding of where progress is being made, where progress has stalled, and where urgent interventions are required. The discussions today also remind us that poverty is not only about income. We've heard from all speakers that poverty is about whether people have access to education, to healthcare, jobs, decent housing, electricity, clean water, sanitation, and opportunities, or opportunity to live in a very dignified manner. Ladies and gentlemen, one important message that came strongly from today's engagement is that these rankings must never be used to stigmatize or label districts. A district with high poverty levels should not be blamed. It should be supported. So the same, districts making strong progress should not be punished by denying them resources. Rather, they should be supported to sustain the gains. deepen the progress, and share lessons that can benefit other districts across the country. The evidence shows that some districts have made very great progress. Others continue to face persistent deprivation despite years of interventions and investment. This raises very important and hard questions we must all confront very honestly. Why have some interventions not translated into sustained poverty reduction in certain districts over time? Because it's not as if interventions have not taken place at all in some of these districts that we are seeing high poverty levels. Are resources reaching the intended beneficiaries? Are programs sufficiently targeted? Are we addressing the real drivers of deprivation? These are very difficult, but they are very necessary questions that the evidence now places before all of us. Distinguished participants, the findings from the work have major implications for Parliament, government, MMDAs, development partners, civil society organizations, and the private sector. These rankings should inform planning, budgeting, targeting, monitoring, and accountability. They should also guide allocation to the District Assembly's Common Fund. That was a common message from all the presenters and speakers who spoke today. And they must also inform public investments to ensure that districts with high and persistent deprivation receive the support they need. We are particularly encouraged as Ghana Statistical Service by the Deputy Minister's pledge to support the service in funding regional dissemination of this masterpiece produced by the service. This is important because the value of the evidence depends on how widely it is understood and used, especially at the local level. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me also note that this work is not the end of the journey at all. In fact, in the next phase of this exercise, as has been amply echoed by our board chair and our honorable MP, Honorable Zaneto, the Ghana Statistical Service would work towards incorporating stronger gender disaggregation and deeper inequality analysis so that we can better understand how multidimensional poverty affects women, men, girls, boys, and vulnerable population groups across different districts in the country. So the next assignment would do the gender disaggregation and many more other disaggregations. Let me, at this point, express our profound appreciation to Honorable Thomas Ampemnyako. He's not here, but we really want to emphasize the fact that he's done excellent for us. He did an excellent job chairing today's meeting for us on behalf of the minister. We also want to sincerely thank the majority leader, the minority leader, all members of parliament here present, and all other members of parliament, the Ghana Statistical Service Governing Board and its chairman, development partners, ASEPA, civil society organizations, the media, they are always there for us, academia, MMDAs, MDAs, and all stakeholders for your continued support to evidence-based policymaking in Ghana. We further congratulate Honorable Dr. Zaneto Ajiman Rawlings on her recent election to the high office of Second Vice President of the Pan-African Parliament. This is a proud achievement for Ghana and for women's leadership on the African continent. Finally, let me express heartfelt appreciation to all participants here today and to the hardworking management and staff of Ghana Statistical Service, whose dedication made this important national assignment and this launch very successful. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the next step is very clear. Let us use this evidence very boldly. Let us move from discussion to implementation. Let us ensure that data informs policy, budget oversight, and investment. And above all, let us work together to ensure that poverty reduction reaches every district, every community, and every Ghanaian. In fact, because of the seriousness the service attached to this particular assignment, we have to make sure that in the list, all the regions are represented in this room. And for that reason, we had to ensure that all our regional statisticians across all 16 regions of the country are present in this room. Let's give them a big round of applause. Yeah. There were concerns that we don't have regional and district representations, but we have it right in this room. Thank you very much and have a safe journey back home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. GS just closed us with something I would like to repeat. He mentioned that poverty is not only about income, and just as Mr. Omar's presentation, he broke it down into the layers that we needed to know. So truly, I hope and I believe that this data and this fact that you have brought to light today will actually lead to action. Please help me in giving him another round of applause. I would now like to invite Mr. Abdullah Mohammed of the Ghana Statistical Service to give us a closing prayer.
Please let us pray. We thank the Almighty Allah for helping us to have this program successful. We know that He is our Creator, our Sustainer, the Lord of the worlds. We pray for His mercies and blessings. We pray that as we are going back to our various houses, may the Almighty Allah give us traveling mercies. We call Him before we started this program, and we are grateful that we have been able to complete this program successfully. We also pray to Almighty Allah to help our government statistician and his team that were able to give us this good report. We thank him for giving us that opportunity. We also thank the Almighty Allah to increase their health, their wealth, their wisdom, and also give them long life and prosperity. We also pray that the report should go to our policymakers so that it will have impact on we, the citizens in Ghana, so that we all benefit from this report. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إسرا كما حملت على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين فانصرنا على القوم المنافقين فانصرنا على القوم الظالمين آمين.
Thank you so much, Alhaji. Thank you all for your participation today. Please, may I ask everyone to kindly remain seated and wait for our key functionaries and dignitaries to walk out before we move towards the lunch area. We'll be having lunch at Opera 1. Lunch is at Opera 1. Thank you very much.